So you know what last Tuesday was, right? Mardi Gras, Shrove Tuesday, Fat Tuesday. It's where you could do all the things that you're going to give up during Lent. Did you give up anything for Lent? I used to, when I was young, and I knew that Lent, since half of my family was Roman Catholic, there was stuff they gave up for Lent, such as meat. I wasn't too much into that. I suggested I give up school, but they didn't seem to buy that one. I never thought about giving up chocolate. I thought maybe Sunday school wouldn't be bad, give that up for Lent. But then as I grew older, I kind of learned it wasn't about the outer stuff we give up. It's about the inner stuff. When my Presbyterian grandmother, she was always sharp-witted sometimes, and sometimes extremely wise. And she once said to me, "It's not about what goes into your mouth, but what comes out of it." Oh. So you don't have to give up the meat. You have to give up the rancor. And other things. Yeah, well, but the whole purpose of Lent is to prepare us for something. It's like Advent, which is to prepare us for Christmas. The preparation of Lent is to prepare you for Easter. And what part of Easter? Resurrection, absolutely. Not crucifixion. So much of what I see in the world, that Easter centers around a stick with a crossbar. And Good Friday was a passing occurrence. And it really is, for every one of us, a metaphysical fact that it is for us in our human life, this life, and enough said, to begin to let go of all of those things, get rid of all of those error beliefs that keep us stuck in bondage. Do you have any? I can remember, I don't know what the current slogans are now among young people, and it shows my age when I say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Remember when that was popular? Was that an error belief? Maybe not. It's all about the outer stuff, but it's not. It's about the inner stuff. What is true about the outer stuff? That changes all the time, right? One day you're here, next day you're not. You've moved to someplace else. One day I remember going through that phase when I was younger. I want to be a fireman. Folks, you couldn't drag me kicking and screaming, and of course now I'd last about, what do you think, 20 minutes? 15? On the job? No, thank you. I had that big dilemma. Was it going to be music or medicine? And it ended up being ministry. What is it? I got stuck on M&Ms. Yeah. But I think music and ministry are very much interrelated. because I saw that when our performances, when we were on the road, people were changed, sometimes by a piece of music, by some way we played a particular piece. I've seen that in my career when I was playing. Maybe they're the same. A lot of changes in life. But where are you heading? Well, you're heading on a journey that you may not really remember you're on. Just a day ago, 2 days ago, I was looking for pictures on Google Images to use in the script, and I came across a photograph of the front part of a Roman Catholic church, the altar and all of the stuff. Absolutely exquisite art. I mean, the altar, it looked like my Catholic part of the family's home church in my hometown, St. Bernard. It was a gothic altar, so it had spires going up all the way up into this vaulted ceiling above it, and the ceiling was painted dark blue, and there were gilt stars on it. It was exquisite, and this picture I saw was absolutely exquisite. Reminded me, I 2003 spent Christmas in Canada. That was the year my father passed, and at that point I said, I'm an orphan. There's nobody to have Christmas with. I think I'll go to Canada. So I went to Toronto, I went to Montreal, I went to Quebec City. I spent Christmas at Chateau Frontenac in Quebec City. Oh, gorgeous. And Christmas dinner in the hotel dining room was fantastic, and I had a table just one table removed from the windows that looked out over a promenade, and people were walking out there, and it was snowing, snowflakes the size of $50, and children were building a snowman, and dogs. It was exquisite, absolutely exquisite. I went to church at the cathedral in Quebec City, and then later went back to Montreal and spent New Year's in Toronto. But in Montreal, I went back to Notre Dame de Montréal. That's the Notre Dame in Montreal. It looked like the picture I saw on the internet. I actually attended a sound and light show, which was a spiritual presentation in the church. And they had large pieces of fabric hanging and draped and lighted in all kinds of ways, and they used multimedia all up around the main altar for this sound and light show. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. And I've been in Europe, and I've been to Notre Dame in Paris. I've been to Köln or Cologne, the cathedral, the dome. Oh, have you been there? Well, underneath it, they've found ancient ruins, and a religious site has existed there since ancient times in the layers underneath the building. It is so huge. The front entrance and doors must be 25, 30 feet tall. From anywhere approaching the city, that's what you see coming in. Amazing. And I walked through many cathedrals around the world. And what it is a journey to Easter. That may be hard to believe. When they built these big cathedrals, they knew what they were doing, because in symbolism, they were presenting you with the journey of your soul to oneness with God. What's the first thing that happened when you were a kid and you were being brought into the church? You were baptized, right? You're brought in the front door, but you weren't taken all the way up into the front. No, you weren't ready for that yet. Came in the door, and the baptistries used to be right inside the door. And what is baptism? But a cleansing of our consciousnesses, cleansing of our awareness. So we begin to see that we are not just physical beings, we are spiritual beings. And we have a spiritual life that's more important than our physical lives. So after that, there's confirmation, and then in the process, you enter the church, and you're there for service. Charles Fillmore said that within every soul, there is a worship service going on continually. And when you attend a service in one of these churches, you might notice how they were constructed, the shape. They're cruciform, looks like a cross. Central section and a transept, looks like a cross. Everybody calls it cruciform. But it looks like this. The altar is here. The entrance is at your feet. And as you're sitting there in service, what are you doing? First off, the structure is to help you realize the awesomeness of a higher power, of God. The amazing quality and awe of an infinite consciousness of absolute good. And during the service, first thing you do is sing a hymn. They usually have an entrance hymn, getting you away from the street, getting your mind off of that. It's like the process of beginning meditation. You enter the church and you begin to relax and let go of the stuff outside. As you watch the service and participate in the service, you're praying. And Charles Fillmore said that prayer is the language of spirituality. You're beginning to realize and reconnect with God itself, with God mind, with that essence of God, that Spirit of God individualized within you. As you're watching this and participating in it, the altar itself is a representation, a symbol of the very presence of God. For most altars in the Gothic cathedrals, there are 3 steps. And at a high mass, there'll be three people up there working. A subdeacon, a deacon, and a priest. Each one has their step. The lower one is for the subdeacon. That's his realm of work. And think of it as the work of feeling nature, subconscious. The deacon works on the next step. I think of that as the conscious mind with intellect. And then the top step is for the priest who is actually celebrating the Mass. And that is the realm of superconsciousness or unity with God. As you participate and you become more and more in tune, you've moved from relaxation through the prayers, you've started the concentration and then contemplation of that presence of God, and eventually you're invited forward to come up and actually experience that divine presence. It's a symbol of us doing the meditation process or the prayer process to come to that place where we are face to face with our Creator, the presence of God within us, the secret place of the Most High. I put some quotations on the back of your bulletin this morning. And the second one on the page, the altar represents a fixed, definite center in consciousness of man. It is a place within where we meet the Lord face to face and are willing to give up our sins or our error beliefs, give up the lower for the higher, the personal for the impersonal, the animal for the divine. That's that place where we have the opportunity to meet that presence of God within ourselves. The next quotation followed the first of Charles Fillmore. Kneeling at the altar, I take my statement of truth and hold it steadily in mind until I get my realization. The logic of my mind is satisfied, and there is the lifting up and expanding of soul consciousness. So that journey into a church is symbolizing the journey from human consciousness, somebody who was on the outside in the human world, through baptism, through the cleansing process and prayer process, reaching that state of oneness with God in meditation, where you kneel before that presence, stand before that presence of God within yourself. And you and the Father are one. Now, our opening statement, of course, they're not my words. These are the words of Jesus. It is not I. It is not the little me that has to perform the tasks. It is not the little me that causes the resurrection to happen within myself. And what is that resurrection? It is that raising up in consciousness to that awareness of God within ourselves. Another quotation from Charles, and I didn't put it on your bulletin, and I didn't put it on the screen. The resurrection of Jesus takes place in us each time we rise to the realization of the perpetual indwelling life that connects us with the Father. The grave clothes of mortal sense. Remember, in the tomb were left the cloths, the grave clothes. The grave clothes of mortal sense, which are thoughts of limitation and inevitable obedience to material laws, are left in the tomb of matter. In that time of resurrection, we rise out of that consciousness of ourselves as human beings with human limitations, that it is our personal power, that if it's to be, we have to make it happen. Instead, we allow God to work in us and through us. It is not I, but the Father abiding in me doeth his works. I'd like to ask you this week to work with this idea. I remember reading Charles Fillmore saying, gleefully, and I can imagine him, I have affirmed 1,000 times. And I respond to that with, some of us are slower than others, Charles, to change our minds. But the next 6 days are not too many days to hold this idea. It is not I, but the Father abiding in me doeth his works. Imagine, whatever you're doing and called to do, you remind yourself of this truth. Now, I know nobody does dishes by hand anymore, right? I do. But it's a thought you can hold while you're doing the dishes. Any activity in life. But even more than that, I want you to remember that journey from the front door of a church, of a cathedral, all the way up to the altar where you reach that secret place of the Most High in consciousness. Remember those steps of going in. The first thing you do as you walk in the door after you're baptized is they have little containers of holy water, which is that's what you were baptized with. So you get to use the holy water and cross yourself, remembering the Trinity: God mind, Son, God's idea of itself in mind, and then the Holy Spirit that brings God ideas into expression in your life. And what they're doing symbolically when they do that is reminding themselves to let go of the outer stuff. So as you walk into a church, you're wiping the outer stuff away. You're getting it out of your head so you can go in, relax, and begin to, through prayer, and that includes affirmation, affirming that you and the Father are one, affirming that it is not I, but the Father abiding in me, who doeth his works. These affirmations then lead you into a place where you are open and receptive, and you can kneel, as Charles said, before that altar, that divine presence within your own consciousness. And realize you and the Father have never been two, have never been separate. You have never been separated from the love, the life, the substance, the intelligence of God. And each time you make that journey, first, sometimes the hardest is through that front door. Sometimes it's hard for us to say, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do this. I'm going to spend time in prayer. I'm going to spend some time turning to God within myself. We call it meditation. Sometimes that's the hardest thing. But once you enter and begin to relax, it becomes easier and easier, because it's not something that you have to program yourself for. It's already programmed in you. You are a creature created for prayer. You are a being created to commune with your Creator. It's just that we have pulled the shades down. We have accepted so much stuff from the outside, so much superstition, man-made beliefs and laws and attitudes, that we've insulated ourselves. And in this process, take that journey in your mind into a pew and into a time of affirmation, meditation, and then keep walking inward, forward, towards that divine presence in the center of your being, represented by kneeling at the altar. That's a journey we can all make. And it's a visualization that may help you find that way to the front.